The glare.
One chair down there.
There's a glare off of it. Yeah.
I have this from 1969.
Can you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and good evening. Tonight is Tuesday, July 8th, 2025. We just came from executive session we discussed police department appointments and potential agreements with the village consultants. All right, so the first item on the agenda tonight is a public hearing regarding a proposed local law amending Chapter 158, Section 2.1 of the Village Code concerning seasonal leaf blower restrictions. So I guess I would start by having a motion second to please open the public hearing.
Second.
Trustee Epstein?
Yes.
Trustee Heiser?
Yes.
Trustee Crom?
Yes.
Mayor Klein?
Yes, thank you.
I think technically
this was-
it's a continuation,
Oh, right,
but
it's a
that's okay.
continuation, right, I apologize, because we did open this public hearing at our last meeting. However, we were down to board members, and I should say that, excuse me, Trustee Morlino is excused from tonight's meeting, but we were down 2 trustees at our last meeting, and so we felt it more appropriate to wait for this conversation till we had more full membership at our meeting. So I guess, Chris, if you want to
Sure.
give another kind of summary of the changes we're making.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that, and then I'll lean on Mr. DeMarco to add anything in that they did through the research, legal research that was done. So when the board last met, they asked us to draft or revise the local law to create some additional options that would have a staging of fines, and to see if the software that we have at our current police department could allow for warnings and any type of a warning system. So we did some additional research. We talked to neighboring municipalities that also went out and see how their regulations looked, to see if we could learn from some of them that had those types of processes. Council also did some additional research, and there's a new proposed local law before the village board, and that what we've learned is you can't avoid going to court. So if you're going to be issuing a ticket, unfortunately, unlike certain types of other violations, this is one where people have to at least be able to go into court. So what's been presented is one that has a staging of fines. The fines would be as per a fee schedule in the law, which would be, first offense would be no less than $0 or more than $25, so it's very nominal, and it could be nothing if the fine is set at 0, which is essentially a warning, other than the inconvenience of having to go to court. The second offense would be no less than 25 nor more than 100, and the third offense is no less than 100 or more than 250. So very rare is there multiple violations of this. We found in other municipalities, usually after the first one, the efforts are changed, the procedures are changed at the house, but it does happen on rare occasion usually with certain contractors. That is the number of violations on the staging. We put it 2 years, because obviously it's hard to track that for over a 10-year period. 10 years ago you had a warning, so this is your second one. So we try to do it over a reasonable point of time on the recommended local law. The local law also makes it very clear in the proposed text that this is a conviction is merely a civil fine. It's nothing greater than that. So it's nothing that would be more than just a civil fine at that point. So the idea is not to really penalize so much as get compliance and provide education. We've had this law in place for, I think, 2 years now, so I think most people are aware of it. Some communities or landscapers from outside the area may not be as aware, but that's a constant educational program that we have to provide. In terms of, maybe council could just touch on why you need to go to court versus not go to court. That would probably be helpful for the board to have a better understanding of.
Yeah, so the authority for pleading guilty by mail comes from the vehicle and traffic law. And that's where, in the instances of offenses that result in a traffic violation and a ticket that's issued can be done by mail. There's no authority for that in other instances, and so that's why there's the requirement that the appearance ticket is issued and the individual has to come to court to resolve the matter.
And we did confirm that also with Rye-Town Court as well, and that's what's done in the other municipalities by and large as well. The law as drafted allows for different people to have a violation that could be the landscaper, could be the homeowner, could be the person responsible for hiring the person doing it. So there's different variations of it, but that does allow for that. Currently, the law as drafted has that flexibility. That was the subject of some board discussion as well. In terms of the existing software in the police department, Chief Dengler looked into that, talked to the vendor. It's something they're looking at, but they're still a ways off in terms of implementing that type of allowance for warnings in the system.
Thank you, Chris. And as was mentioned during that synopsis, is we've had this law in place for quite a while now. And I think, some municipalities had it where it was completely banning gas-powered leaf blowers throughout the year, and it set in after 6 months. Essentially, at this point, we've given everyone about a 2-year grace period. And so I think the idea from this board was we want to be able to see this law have more teeth so that it's, the idea behind it is compliance. It's not just to have a nice look on our code books. So this is a public hearing. I would open it up to anyone from the public who would like to make any comments on this. Seeing none, I would open this up to any comment from board members.
I have a question. Right now, in the hierarchy of who might be fined, it would be the landscaper, the owner of the property, and also the operator of the...
It could be, yeah.
When you say could be, that would
mean-
be up to the judge?
Up to the person issuing the violation.
Okay. I mean, I personally don't think that the person operating the leaf blower, unless he or she is doing it on his or her own, should be subject to any penalty. I think it should be the landscaper and the owner of the property.
I would agree with that sentiment, and I think that's something that certainly we could see put into effect through conversation with the police department. I think it's a matter of, obviously if it's a landscaping company, it's someone who's just been hired by that company, they're doing as they're directed. So I agree with that. Any other comment from the board? Yes, Trustee Crum.
No, this is just a repeat of last meeting. But frankly, this is, to me, all about implementation. I don't see a lot new here. The law, as it's been on the books for 2 years, allowed us to go after the landscape company and effectively the person that hired the landscaper. So just the way I see it now, there's a little more clarity in that if somebody owns a house that's being leased to somebody else, and that person that's leasing the house hires a landscaper, I think it's the lessee, is that the right word? Anyway, it's not about who owns the property necessarily. Like if you live in an HOA and your HOA is hiring the landscaper, which I know a lot of the HOAs have a special exemption in place, but we've gotten some comments in that people were worried, I live in an HOA and am I going to get fined? And I think the answer to that, as I read this, is no, and if anybody has a clarity on that, but I think it's,
Yeah.
anyway.
No.
My real point is, there's nothing new. We always had the ability for the last 2 years to go after more than the landscaper, so that's not new. Number two, it was a little convoluted, but the penalties were already up to $250, even though you had to be warned first. This new schedule of fines is consistent with that. So we're not making the fines more aggressive than they were starting 2 years ago. The reason I'm sort of going through this is I've heard from people on both ends, and frankly, people that were in support of this law 2 years ago would like to see this kind of thing implemented or more, and the people that were against it 2 years ago have additional problems, but frankly, in my mind, the problems they had are the same as the problems they had 2 years ago. We're not going further and making this more aggressive. We're just trying to implement it. Also hearing from the Sustainability Committee, we heard some good feedback and saying, we're a friendly community, we want compliance. Can't people, admit, hey, I was at fault here, sign the ticket, and send it in? And so thank you to everyone that investigated that. I think it's a great thing. And then also, as I read other communities' laws, a lot of other communities clarified, which we're doing here, this is not a criminal conviction, which seems to be important, which is important, obviously is important. And so I'm glad that clarity is in here too. So given all that, I want to say I support it. Sorry if I was a little
No,
long-winded. Yeah, yeah.
and your point is well taken, that this doesn't go beyond what we did. And what was already in place, a lot of the issue was we had no way to really issue and then track warnings. And so this really makes it so that we can, in the sense that the least amount of fine can be tracked.
Right.
Yes, Trustee Epstein.
So I know that you all discussed this, and we have discussed it I don't want to say ad nauseum, but several times now. But for clarity's sake, my question is, how have we communicated this to the homeowners? How have we communicated this to the gardeners, the landscaping companies? Because quite frankly, I don't really know if the information is out there. The law has been on the books for 2 years, but I personally have not had a conversation with my gardener regarding it. And I know that when all of the Maine gardeners came here to fight the fact that they did not want this in the first place, they have a kind of union. So is there any way for us to communicate in English and Spanish in a flyer that this is what's going to happen going forward? Because quite frankly, I see and hear the blowers still constantly. So what have we done to communicate this? Because if we haven't communicated it effectively, I really think it's an issue.
I think you're talking about for the residential, so we'll focus on that. Obviously, commercial, we were reaching out directly because of the exemption issues, the application.
is all
So for the
really
residential, it's my understanding that most people, if not, the vast majority of residents are aware of it. But at the same time, how have we done it? We've done it through our traditional means. At this point, we've done it through social media, which is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, we've done it through, we had a demonstration for the commercial properties. Remember, we did it at Highway Garage for the commercial landscapers. We had samples of the different types of equipment at our Rybrook birthday. And if you remember, we had all different battery-type equipment to show them, the differences and what they look like, and, that people could touch and feel them. We brought our own equipment there, so we had a table set up for it. But I do agree with what Trustee Epstein says. It's one that we have to continue to educate residents on. We're working on a new thing for new residents, handing out recycling bins with information. That could be included in there. We could definitely create a flyer that residents can give to their landscaper in English and Spanish. I think that's a great idea. Email blasts, we've done a number, but we could do more again. It's going to be like any other law that's being enforced, and we want to continue to educate people. We have new people coming into the community, may not be aware, so it's one of those things you have to constantly remind yourself to keep providing that information out there and keep it in the forefront.
Right, but it's also the classic example of what we're struggling with throughout the village on all matters, and that is communication. We don't have the Westmore News to provide this as a way of communicating. Not everybody's on Facebook, not everybody's on Instagram. So I want to make sure that we find, with the rest of our communications, how to get it out there.
Right.
So I really would like to think about
And
that, too.
and we'll continue to get the word out there. Unfortunately for some people, their first recognition of it may be the fun. I would imagine that most people are aware of it, though, considering that it has been 2 years. We've given, like Chris said, we've sent out numerous email blasts. There's been a lot of ways that this information has been communicated. And in some ways, it's no different than, needing building permits. Some people are just not going to, want to realize that they have to do these things,
They don't know-
for things that they do. But it's still part of our code, and certainly, and I know you're just talking about the communication, but I wouldn't want to delay this any
No,
further.
no, I'm not
and I
looking
know
to
that's not-
delay it.
No, and I think it is
reach out-
important that we continue to get the word out there as much as we can.
I think a mailing would be very helpful in that, one, not everybody checks their computer assuming they even have one, and two, not everybody assuming they have a computer and check it necessarily going to read anything from the Village of Rybrook. A mailer, hey, if you don't look at your mail, shame on you.
And if we do
The
go
other-
that route, I would say let's have it as a reminder, because this has been on the books for 2 years.
The other thing is,
More than 2 years.
the first time one of our residents has to go to court, it's not the fine, it's having to go to court and losing time sitting in the courtroom. That word will get out very quickly.
But that's most likely what will change the behavior, though,
Yes.
for people.
That will have an amazing impact on virtually all the residents.
Right.
And we can reach out. I'll make sure, I'll have to make contact with any landscaper association. I know there used to be one. I just haven't heard of them lately. You've done it several times. Okay, so we can do that again. Okay.
So in English and Spanish, and letting them know that there's going to be a fine to their company.
Yep, we can do that.
I think that would be really terrific, thank you. And, could be, fun.
And letting people know that they can't plead it out, that they have to show up in court.
Right.
I mean, that to me is the horrible part,
Yeah.
if you've ever had the pleasure of being in the
You have
courtroom.
to go to court for a $0 fine.
Exactly. Well, you don't know what it's going to be, but the
Right.
maximum the first time is $25. The notion of losing an entire morning or an entire afternoon because you might be fined up to $25 will make people basically want to bang their head against the wall.
All right, any other, yes.
No, I will say regarding communication, my landscaper wrote me a letter saying this is going into effect. He also said, Don, no other communities are sending warnings out. This is well known. Like 2/3 of the communities in Westchester County have this law.
Yeah.
This is becoming, there's a bunch of communities near here that are doing, I think we just said, doing, bans all year long, which I've heard landscapers are not a fan of, just because the number one issue is the leaf,
Leaves.
the big heavy leaves, right? But we're not talking about that here, right? So we're playing catch up. I don't think we should be too afraid of this. Come on.
No. I
So
agree.
it's not just like our communication. Google leaf blowers. You'll read about all sorts of laws. White Plains just passed it in terms of, complete ban all year long. So our law is very middle of the road. Our fines are very low, friendly, if you will. I mean, on the public record, City of Rye on the third try, $1,500. We're talking court time and $1,500 if you want
They're
to.
required to find all three, too.
Yeah, and they're doing all three. Yeah, so I mean.
We also have a large number of residents that are in HOAs, so once we hit to the HOAs who are hiring, the other some landscapers were able to get information out on that too, I think, for anyone that lives in associations, although some of them are part of the exemptions that we went through as well.
But not all of them.
Yeah, so
all of
some
them have
smaller ones. No,
exemptions
there's
at
some
this
smaller
point?
ones.
The HOAs, but also some of the smaller ones don't, but also some of the HOAs, there are residents that don't get their care done by whoever the HOA is hiring.
Welfare. Right.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah,
All right, any other comments from the board?
the one public comment.
Yeah, no, I know.
Oh, yeah, I was going
Go
to say.
ahead. No, no,
Yeah,
just-
maybe we should also say that we have exemptions out for a lot of the HOAs and commercial properties, and if there's any changes to the way we implement that, that's not what we're talking about here. So I know we've gotten some comments about people were worried about, that lived in an HOA and thought that this law or were sort of advocating for us to do something different about that now. And that's not what this is about right now, right? I
No,
mean,
this is
right, correct.
simply
So,
about that,
I
right.
just wanted to address that.
Right, and
We've heard
that's-
people, I want to let them know they're being heard.
Right, and they absolutely were heard, and that's not to say that we won't further change this
Right.
legislation down the road. I mean, I can see a reason for us to go the way that many other communities are going in a complete ban, and that may happen at some point. But we're certainly not ready for that right now, and that's not what this public hearing is
Right,
about.
okay, I just wanted to
Yeah.
sort of give a shout out to some of the comments we've gotten in the last couple of days, yeah.
Right. Any other comments from the board? This is a public hearing. I would again welcome any public comment.
Hello, how are you? Hi. So, just
If you
one,
could just state your name and address.
you don't know me. Joe Larongo, 126 North Ridge Street. I'm getting feedback. Okay. So you see, because I know like my neighbors gardeners use gas-powered leaf blowers, and I'm not calling the police for that. But I call the police for speeding, and they can't keep up with the speeders. So how are they going to keep up with speeders and leaf blowers? And cars kill people, but leaf blowers, I've never seen anybody get blown away by a leaf blower. So are we hiring someone else to attend to those leaf blower calls? Or are we tying up the police that can't even wrap around the speeders that are doing 40, 45 miles an hour in a 30?
I think that this will be done by the police. Some of it will be, one of the differences, the major difference that I can see in this is that if someone calls the police about someone speeding, they're gone quickly. With a leaf blower, most likely it's still being used in place when they respond. And it certainly, isn't going to take away from their normal duties. The police will still be responding to any calls that they
Will
get.
video be suitable to be put in? I
Oh, I have
you
no
know,
idea about the.
someone shoots a gardener doing landscaping with the gas blower, but he leaves, and then you show the police the video.
I think that would be pretty hard to prove the time and everything else, even if it's stamped. I think might be difficult to
Okay.
really enforce that. But at the same time, if there's a higher priority call at the moment, obviously they're going to go to a different type of call than the leaf blower call. But
Yeah.
if they're available, they're going to certainly go out.
Okay.
Joe?
Thank you.
And also, we have a really excellent police force, and I don't hate to think that whenever they were asked to take on additional tasks, we then had to subtract the task from them. So there was basically breaking even. I think they're really up to this.
I would agree. Any other questions or comments from the public? Any further questions or comments from the board? Can I please have a motion and second to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Epstein?
Yes.
Trustee Heiser?
Yes.
Trustee Crom?
Yes.
Mayor Klein?
Yes, thank you. By the way, there was a lot of this at the last meeting because we only had three of us, so I had to keep going back and forth of who was making the motions and the seconds. All right, so we're going to move right into the resolution. Resolution number 1, considering adopting a proposed local law amending Chapter 158 of the Code of the Village of Rybrook concerning seasonal leaf blowers.
Whereas Chapter 158 of the Village Code regulates leaf blower ban in effect between May 1st and September 31st of each year, and whereas a proposed local law was introduced on April 8th, 2025, amending the Village Code regarding violation procedures and implementing escalating fees based upon the number of violations, and whereas the Village of Rybrook Board of Trustees held a duly noticed public hearings on the proposed local law on April 22nd, May 27th, June 24th, and then the public hearing tonight was closed on July 8th, and whereas a proposed action is an unlisted action pursuant to seeker, now therefore be resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Rybrook hereby adopts the proposed local law to amend the village code concerning seasonal leaf blower ban restrictions.
Thank you, Chris. Can I have a motion and second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any further question or comment? I didn't realize that it had been 3 months that we've been, and we apologize for those who were waiting for us to make a decision on this. I apologize that it's taken us so long. Any other questions or comments?
Trustee Epstein?
Yes.
Trustee Heiser?
Yes.
Trustee Crom?
Yes.
Mayor Klein?
Yes, thank you. Resolution, why is this not loading now? Resolution number 2. Considering modifying the dates of the village board meetings in August.
Therefore be resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby cancels the regular meeting scheduled on either August 12th or August 26th due to summer scheduling conflicts. Or any other, or any other date that you
One
propose.
second. I may propose an in-between date on that. I may end up having a conflict on the 12th. I don't know what everyone else's schedule is in that, whether the in-between would work, whether the 26th is preferred. Certainly, if I have a conflict on the 12th and everyone else can make it, then you can, I'm no different than anyone else. You can certainly have a meeting without me.
Well, what if we split the difference and made it the 19th?
19th, that's what I'm proposing.
That works for me.
I'm good with the 19th. Well, good. I'm as good as I usually am.
I'm gonna say, do we know there are no other meetings that,
Don't think so.
actually, I can look, I'm on Civic Web, so let's just say I usually would have it.
Perfect.
Yeah, it really
Looks
doesn't
good.
listen, and there's nothing on the calendar for that.
Great.
You're saying the 19th?
So,
Does that work?
We have music in the park on the 20th, just so you know.
Okay.
Right now I'm available.
Done? Does that
Yes,
work?
yes.
All right, so
amended?
can I please have a motion and second to cancel the regularly scheduled meetings on
Yes.
August 12th and 26th, and to set a new village board meeting date of August 19th, 2025.
So moved.
Second. Second, fine.
Trustee Epstein?
Yes.
Trustee Heiser?
Yes.
Trustee Crom?
Yes.
And Mayor Klein.
Yes. Thank you.
That was painless.
That was. All right, resolution number 3, setting a public hearing and referring a local law establishing a moratorium on the review and approval of applications for battery energy storage systems in the Village of Rybrook.
Whereas the Village of Rybrook Board of Trustees introduced a local law to enact a moratorium on the review and approval of applications for battery energy storage systems in the Village of Rybrook while the village studies, analyzes, and determines potential appropriate revisions and amendments to the village code regarding battery energy storage systems. And whereas the adoption of a moratorium on land development or construction is a Type 2 action pursuant to seeker, and accordingly no further environmental review is required, and be it further resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby refers the local law to the County Planning Department pursuant to General Municipal Law and the County Administrative Code, and the Village of Rybrook Planning Board for report and recommendation. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees shall hold a public hearing on August 19th, 2025 at 7 p.m. at Village Hall to consider the proposed local law establishing a moratorium on the review and approval of the applications for battery energy storage systems in the Village of Rybrook.
Thank you, Chris. Can I have a motion and second, please?
So moved. Come on, guys.
Second.
So, just for public knowledge, the next two, this resolution and the next one are on potential moratoriums. We're setting public hearings on these, and essentially what we're looking to do is just, while we don't have applications in front of us, to make sure that we're taking a full look and doing research on what exactly the effects of future applications might be on the village. The battery storage systems is something that we have not seen in Rybrook. We have not seen an application on this. This is something, though, that we are seeing in other communities, and there's a lot of information out there. I think we definitely want to have many parties involved, and we want expert opinions, so we know exactly where it goes. So, Chris, you want to... Sorry, I should have had you go first.
I think you pretty much covered it. But so these are large storage locations. Basically, if you think of like a C box or a box that kind of like the size that you see on shipping containers, things like that. They can be that kind of size. Sometimes they're located, a few of those, could be many of those. And we're just seeing a lot of those applications going through the county. We currently do not have any active applications on this, so it's a good time to do the research, learn from some of the other communities that are wrestling with this issue, and to make sure that we have appropriate legislation in place to reflect the needs of the community.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions or comments from the board? I know we're just setting the public hearing, but if there's anything you want to say on
This would involve looking at the zoning and the building code, or just?
Putting in regulations in our code. I'd just leave it like that.
Okay.
August 19th.
You did say that.
I would just like to say, although I lost the issue on guns stores, I feel the same way about this, which is they shouldn't be in the village.
So, and again, this will be, referring the local law, setting a public hearing, so that we can, again, take a look at this. This is making sure that we're doing our due diligence, we're doing our research, so that we know how to appropriately handle these if and when they come before us.
Yes.
Or the village, they may not even come to us, but
Yes.
if and when they come before the village. Any questions or comments? And again, this is just setting the public hearing.
Trustee Epstein?
Yes.
Trustee Heiser?
Yes.
Trustee Crom?
Yes.
Mayor Klein?
Yes, thank you. Resolution number 4, considering setting a public hearing and referring a local law establishing a moratorium on the review and approval of applications for the conversion of commercial to residential development in the village of Rybrook.
Whereas the Village of Rybrook Board of Trustees introduced a local law to enact a moratorium on the review and approval of applications for conversion of existing commercial to residential development in the Village of Rybrook, while the village studies, analyzes, and determines potential appropriate revisions and amendments to the village code regarding such conversions so as to preserve and enhance the Village of Rybrook's tax base. And whereas the adoption of a moratorium on land development or construction is a type 2 action pursuant to seeker, and therefore no further environmental review is required. Now therefore be resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby refers the local law to the County Planning Department pursuant to general municipal law and the County Administrative Code, and to the Village of Rybrook Planning Board for report and recommendation. And be it further resolved, the Village of Rybrook Board of Trustees shall hold a public hearing on August 19th at 2025 at 7:30 p.m. at Village Hall, Rybrook, New York, to consider the proposed local law establishing a moratorium on the review and approval of applications for the conversion of existing commercial properties to residential or homestead development in the Village of Rybrook.
Thank you, Chris. Can I have a motion second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Chris, I'll let you go first on this.
Sure, be happy to. So, there's a growing concern in the Village of Rybrook, which we talk about in our budget process as well, where there's a disparity between the homestead tax base and the non-homestead tax base. Right now, there's two different rates, tax rates that are established for both. The non-homestead rate is significantly higher than the homestead rate. So when you look at the Village of Rybrook, and we have a lot of unusually available large properties, there's a concern that the village would like to make sure that the zoning for those large properties would protect the tax base, protect the balance of residential and commercial, or homestead and non-homestead properties, so that both the commercial properties and the residential properties wouldn't be harmed by any future type of development. So it's a good time to do it. We have no current applications before the village and any of the larger properties. So it's the right time to look at it, look at our zoning, look at our code to make sure that they reflect the desires and the policy decisions that need to be made by the village board.
Thank you, Chris. And again, this is a pause. This is us, making sure that we're doing our homework, we're doing our due diligence to see what's in the best interest of the village. And importantly, as Chris said, we do not have any current applications. We do know that we're a changing village, and, what we want to do is, make sure that we're protecting our residents, be it both commercial residents, residential residents, anyone who's setting up shop in Rybrook, whether it be to live or do business. we want to make sure that, the properties we have are appropriate for that.
Yes.
Any questions or comments from the board? Again, this is setting the public hearing, and referring this, we certainly on both of these look forward to receiving comments back.
Trustee Epstein?
Yes.
Trustee Heiser?
Yes.
Trustee Crom?
Yes.
Mayor Klein?
Yes.
And Mayor, I'd just like to point out on the prior resolution, not the one we just adopted, but the prior one, that referenced the 7 o'clock public hearing, so I modified to 7:30, which I read in the most recent resolution.
Right, I noticed that as well,
Okay,
and I
thank
should
you.
have said something. All right, and I noticed when you read the second one.
Yes, the first
I
one needs to
noticed
be
it as
corrected.
well, right. All right, thank you. Resolution number 5, considering an appointment to the Town of Rye Board of Assessment Review.
Whereas there is an existing agreement between the Town of Rye and the villages of Rybrook and Portchester describing the method of appointment for members of the Town of Rye Board of Assessment Review, and whereas in accordance with this agreement, the Village of Rybrook desires to reappoint Mark Clapper to serve a 5-year term on the Town of Rye Board of Assessment Review as the Rye Town designated member, now therefore be resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby reappoints Mark Clapper of 1 Charles Lane, Rybrook, New York, to serve as the Rye Town designated member to the BAR for a term of 5 years, which term begins on October 1st, 2025, and will expire on September 30th, 2030, in accordance with the intermunicipal agreement among the Town of Rye, the villages of Rybrook, and the Village of Portchester.
Thank you, Chris. Can I have a motion and second, please?
So moved.
Second.
We want to thank Mr. Clapper for his service on this board to date, and being willing to be reappointed to this. People volunteer their time for the village, including the people sitting up here, are doing so out of their care for the community. So I wanted to say thank you to Mark and everyone else. Any other questions or comments?
Trustee Epstein?
Yes.
Trustee Heiser?
Yes.
Trustee Crom?
Yes.
And Mayor Klein?
Yes, thank you. Resolution number 6, considering renewal of an intermunicipal agreement with the County of Westchester, EAP, and the Village of Rybrook.
Now therefore be resolved that the Village of Rybrook is authorized to enter into an IMA, or municipal agreement, with the County of Westchester Employee Assistance Program for administrative, managerial, and referral services for the period March 10th, 2025 to December 31st, 2029, at a rate of $45 per employee per year. And be it further resolved that the mayor is authorized to execute and deliver all documents necessary or appropriate to accomplish the purposes of the resolution. And be it further resolved that the village is hereby authorized to release funds totaling $2,850 to honor the IMA for the 2025 calendar year.
Thank you, Chris. Can I have a motion and second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Certainly, this is an important program, and I would, urge any employee who is in need of this program to please seek assistance.
Yep.
I
Mayor?
think EAP programs are wonderful. Chris, do our unions have membership assistance programs?
Some of them have separate EAP agreements for assistance, particularly our uniform services.
Yeah,
And they do have some as well. I will say, though, that we do utilize, so this is a program, it's a very big EAP, because it covers a lot of employees throughout the county, and the EAP has some really great people working there, and it's not just, it could be referrals by the village for anything that's work-related. It can be voluntary referrals. I can say that we certainly have a history of both types of things that occur. We have employees that go there voluntarily. We have employees that go there as referrals. And they also do training for us. So we do a lot of different types of training programs, which they come in and give to our employees as well. So it is a used resource that we have, and we appreciate the services they provide. The one thing I see is the dollar amount. Greg, did you get the $28.50 from that? Because the notes say a different type of number. That's why I'm asking. What's that? The notes? So instead of the $28.50, it should be $34.20.
420. Okay.
Okay? It's $45 per employee. And when they come out and do like training and other things, that's all covered within that.
Any questions or comments? All right.
Trustee Epstein?
Yes.
Trustee Heiser?
Yes.
Trustee Crom?
Yes.
And Mayor Klein?
Yes, thank you. Resolution number 7, considering the establishment and various appointments of a Green Building Code Task Force.
Whereas the Village of Rybrook seeks to implement green building legislation in the Village of Rybrook for commercial and residential properties, and whereas Rybrook wishes to establish a task force of village staff, 2 trustees, 2 planning board members, and 2 sustainability committee members, excuse me, to review and provide report and recommendation to the Village of Rybrook Board of Trustees that includes options for the following goals for new applications. 1 would be to recommend options to incentivize residential owners to include green construction and/or landscaping that would improve the environment. This may include financial and/or zoning incentives. And 2, recommend options to require that commercial properties include green construction and/or landscaping that would improve the environment. And whereas the proposed Green Building Code Task Force would have limited duration that would end after report and recommendation has been provided to the board, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the establishment of a Green Building Code Task Force, and be it further resolved, the Board of Trustees appoints the following individuals to serve on that task force. So the village administrator, administrative aide Greg Rivera, said myself, the building inspector Stephen Fuse, superintendent of public works Michael Nowak, Mayor Jason Klein, trustee Sal Morlino, planning board is Rob Goodman and Lenny Weissman, and sustainability committee would be Michael Siegel and Jonathan Metz.
Thank you, Chris. Can I have a motion and second, please?
So moved.
Second.
I would point out that my name is spelled wrong.
Yes. Sorry, we apologize.
Minor
But
detail.
other than that,
We apologize.
maybe it was a different Jason. Maybe it's a different Jason Klein.
Sorry about that. Yes.
This is no. And this is something that's obviously been near and dear to my heart that I've wanted to do for a while. I think we started on it a while back when I was first a trustee on this board. We started looking at it. We looked at other municipal codes, and one of the things we got hung up on was how do we certify this? How are we making sure, because we don't want to put undue burden on our building inspectors or our building department staff, and at the same time, we don't want to make sure that it has to be through some outside company that's making money off. So I think there's a lot of questions that really need to be resolved. I'm really glad that we're putting together a committee on this to really take a hard look at this and figure out how we can start to implement this in the Village of Rybrook. There are other communities that have done this pretty far along. I know of at least one community in Westchester that's had this in place for at least 12 years. So there's a lot of precedent out there, and again, there's ideas of incentivization versus requirement, and a lot of discussion to be had. So I look forward to taking part in this, and certainly to the report and recommendation coming back to us. Questions or comments from the board? Yes, Trustee Crum.
Yeah, a couple comments. One is, just so we keep a totally open mind, suggestion on the first whereas to state that we want to potentially implement green building code legislation, as opposed to, unless this board thinks, it's just a suggestion that it's a fait accompli, that we're definitely going to, no matter what this task force recommends, we're going to implement legislation no matter what. So add the word potentially. That's a suggestion. I do favor, by the way, this. I don't want to say this is like a back doorway to say we shouldn't be doing it. I do favor this, but I'd like to add the word potentially there. Also, along the same lines, on the second, whereas in the second section, I think we should add, on the commercial properties, require and/or incentivize. Because I don't think, right now it says we want to incentivize, in number 1, we want to incentivize residential owners, but on the commercial, it says it only says require. And I think we should leave it open to what this task force comes up with, whether it be, because I've looked at a number of laws also. I do see some are set up much more in the way of incentivization, some are more, and some are a blend. So I think we should leave that open. Number 3, I just want to, and this is probably a superfluous comment, but I'll say it anyway. To me, I just want to say that green building and landscaping definitely includes stormwater, a look at stormwater. Whether it be residential, commercial, or whatever, quality, quantity, open mind, but to me, it's an important part, especially for Rybrook, that, I look at some of these things, and they're more about, sometimes they give short shrift to the stormwater, and I think I would love to see the task force, focus in on the things that are most near and dear to our particular village. Like we're talking about, and I don't know whether the task force can do this, energy may be outside the purview because of some federal, state laws on energy law, but, we're talking about Con Ed rates going up, we're talking about looking at these battery storage systems, things that can save energy too, really hard-hitting stuff, because sometimes I think this gets a bad rap for being very sort of marketing, fluffy, I want to be able to say my building is LEEDs or this or that, but, I think it can be very, very good, very useful stuff. And I just encourage, I'm sure the task force will do this, just, focus in as much on, hard-hitting Rybrook stuff. So that's my 3 comments, 2 of them regarding the wording of this thing.
Well, I can tell you that I will be on the committee. It will absolutely focus on stormwater.
Oh, excellent, excellent.
If anyone who's been on the board with me a long time knows that I am very much about
Excellent.
stormwater.
Excellent.
Trustee Epstein, yes.
So I was going to concur with what Trustee Crom said, because we have the gift of having a new trustee that was on our planning board, and he has wonderful expertise, and he was an engineer, et cetera. So this has been your focus, and I think that there has been a lack of focus when we've had development in the past on the stormwater, because I know that it's always one of the last things to be discussed, and it's when everything else is already done. So we haven't paid the attention that is due it. So I'm advocating for what you're saying.
Okay, thank you.
Don, I have a question for you.
Well,
In the second whereas, in the second section, you said you want to make it incentivize or require, and/or require.
Right.
But why wouldn't you do the same in the first?
I thought it had been looked at by the board previously, and somehow they decided it would only be an incentive. It wouldn't be a requirement.
It is,
Yeah.
and it's, I think, and I think this comes out of old conversations that we had when this was first brought up. When this was first brought up, the recommendation, I believe, that we got back from Sustainability Committee, because it was only to Sustainability Committee, was that it be incentivized for residential and required for commercial. So I think there's absolutely an option to look at both for both.
I was going to say, if
Okay.
I would make it both.
Okay, that's fine with
Yeah.
me.
1 and 2.
Okay, so can I just go through those, just so I have it?
Sure, and
If you don't
regarding
mind.
the first one, I'm not sure we necessarily need the potential, just because,
Okay, I mean, it must be implied. It could be
I think it's,
implied.
because it's going to be a decision coming before us,
Okay.
and we always have the option to implement it, deny it, or to make changes as it once it comes to us. It's going to come to us as a recommendation. So at that point, again, this is just kind of the establishment of this committee to take a look at it, and I think it's proper that we're seeking to implement it. Doesn't mean that we're going to.
Okay, I'll accept that.
Okay, so all the changes then are in 1 and 2, and I'm trying to incorporate the stormwater one as well. So I'm just going to write number 1, I'll read it again. 1, recommend options to incentivize and/or require residential owners to include green construction, I'll say landscaping, and stormwater methods that would improve the environment. This may include financial and/or zoning incentives. And 2, we recommend options to incentivize and/or require that commercial properties to include green construction, landscaping, and stormwater methods that would improve the environment.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Can I have a motion second as amended?
So moved as amended?
Second,
Don't know if I needed that or not, but I figured. it's a little
Why not?
All
I
right.
think it's like Roger, I hear you.
Trustee Epstein?
Yes.
Trustee Heiser?
yes.
Trustee Crom?
Yes.
Mayor Klein?
Yes, thank you. Resolution number 8, considering approval of the minutes for the meeting held on May 13th, 2025.
Now therefore be resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the minutes for the meeting held on May 13th, 2025.
Thank you, Chris. Can I have a motion and second, please?
So moved. It was a wonderful meeting, by the way.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
None.
Nine.
None. All right. Administrators report.
Yeah, this is, we always say July is kind of a community events on steroids, right? So
Yes.
we have a lot of community events coming up, starting this week, just going forward. July 11th, we have our first Ice Cream Friday in Pine Ridge Park from 6 to 7:30. Also on July 11th is our first movie night, which is Garfield in Pine Ridge Park, starting around 8:15. On July 12th, we have our pickleball demo and grand opening on Garibaldi Park from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. So we're going to have it's the first time doing that type of an event. Pickleball is very popular. Some people don't know what it is or haven't played it. So we're going to have one court. We have 3 brand new courts at Garibaldi Park, and we're going to have one court open with instructors to just, in a nice casual way, kind of teach people how to play pickleball, and then there'll be open play on the other 2 courts. July 16th, we have the music event in Pine Ridge Park starting at 6:45, and that's going to be Kickin' Nash. So Kickin' Nash, you can't say that too many times at board meetings, can you?
No, you
Oh,
cannot.
you say it every.
I know, every year, I know that year. So Kickin' Nash will be here on July 16th, so that'll be kicking off our, our music event.
Pun intended.
Yes. July 18th is going to be our next Ice Cream Friday, and then on July 19th will be a food truck event at Pine Ridge Park from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. We've been working hard planning on that as well, so that should be a lot of fun too. Other items, I just want to mention that we have our group working with the Portchester School District to work on the joint traffic, parking, and pedestrian study that we're looking at the Portchester Middle School and High School. So we met earlier today. And we're starting to interview the firms, some of the firms that responded that we think we have the most interest in. And then once those interviews are done, we'll be providing recommendations back to the school board and the village board to appoint one of the firms to do the joint study. And we're looking to kind of kick this off around September, because that's also when the school will be open, the traffic counts will be more appropriate, and so forth. So that's the time frame that we're looking on. Third, we have, just want to mention the Avon and Portchester Middle School flood mitigation project. We're working to submit a grant on that, and part of the grant, without having what they call the BRIC, which is Building Resistant Infrastructure in Communities, BRIC, that grant is no longer available, which is very disappointing. But at the same time, there's another grant that's available that we need to do, but we need to have easements in place in order to do that. So just an alert to the board, and I put this in my letter to the board too. You know, we're working on getting easements and/or license agreements, working with Keen and Bean, to put those in place that if the grant gets approved and if the funding is all paid for the project, that we would have access to the properties behind Avon where the stormwater system would be, as well as the subsurface part of the Portchester Middle School field. So, yeah, that's what we're working on now. If the grant doesn't come into play, then the license agreements will go away, but we're working on that now. Other item, Westchester Power has been trying to do an outreach, you know, trying to work with, listening to the board and listen to some of their charge. Sustainable Westchester has been working to try to get information about Westchester Power. And when it came to the Rybrook birthday, so they had a table there. We also had they also came to Village Hall today, which we put information out. No real turnout there. I don't think people are really flooding to come to Village Hall, but they will also be available this Thursday from 5 to 6:30. And there'll also be an online virtual session on July 29th at 7 p.m. So we're going to send more reminders about that out and letting people know that, you know, if you have questions about Westchester Power, you want to know your options on how to opt out or what it's about. You know, they're trying to provide information out to the community on all those items. That's all I have for tonight.
Great. Thank you, Chris. And, you know, certainly we are hopeful about the new funding stream for the flood mitigation project. And I'm glad you were able to explain it. And I know you had to take some time to explain that to me of how that works. So, any other questions, comments from the board?
What I just asked.
Oh, right, sorry. Yes,
It's been
and I
5
believe,
minutes, I understand.
it's been less than 5 minutes.
The
I
memory
think.
cells start to
And
decay
Chris,
at a certain point.
Remind me if, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we are going to have an event for the volunteers of the village.
Yes, I just don't have the date in front of me, but it is scheduled on our calendar. I just don't remember what date it
thought it
was.
was
The
the 23rd.
23rd,
June-
That's right. Oh,
July
Greg knows. You sent the message out. What is it?
July 23rd.
July 23rd. We're going to have a special get-together at one of our parks like we've done.
It is prior
Prior to the music night.
second Billy Dan concert.
Yep. And we'll have I think, ice cream and an event there for people to come. And Greg has already reached out to all the board members to invite them to that evening.
5:45.
So, and again, we appreciate everything everyone does there. It's, unfortunately, I will be unable to attend, as I'll be away. So I'll take the moment right now to thank everyone who volunteers for the village, and I'm sure whoever wants to make a speech that night, will
Deputy
do
Mayor.
a better job than I can at thanking them anyway.
Now that you've already
So-
thanked everybody, I don't have to say it.
I don't know if we have the same amount of people watching us right now.
No.
I'm going to work on the assumption that we do.
All right, well, any other questions, comments from the public? Seeing none, the next board meeting next meeting of the Board of Trustees is Tuesday, July 22nd, 2025. Thank you and have a good night.